Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Gotham. A fantastic 2-hour season finale, and obviously get straight into it and just break down everything. Obviously, we got our introduction to Ra's al Ghul. I'm not familiar with the actor who plays him. I didn't really look too deeply into it. Maybe I'll end up finding out later on it is someone I'm familiar with, but it's kind of very interesting, his meeting with Bruce, and I do appreciate the first thing he's like, yeah, the first thing I want you to do is kill Alfred, because Alfred's, Bruce's last ties to his past life, because for him, because Alfred is like, I'm not going to give up on you, Bruce, no matter where you go, I will be there, because it's like cutting yourself off from your pain and stuff like that, it takes away the love. Like, you can't have love without pain, because pain is what, because the fact is he's cutting off his emotions, that means he's cutting off his love and everything, and it's like, that's a big part of life. And yes, with love comes pain, but with that pain also brings new opportunities for love. It's kind of, I think, at least that's how I'm seeing the way Alfred was putting it. I was thinking Bruce is going snap out of it at the last second and not stab Alfred. It's like, nope, he stabbed Alfred. I was like, okay, maybe it's that he actually stabbed in the chest. Oh no, he stabbed him directly in the chest, but that immediately caused Bruce to snap out of it. Roz was like, dude, the fact of the matter is, I'm more interested in you now because you broke the spell that you were under. That shows me your strength. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on you. And as I guess, this whole situation was about becoming become his heir, which I kind of figured that's what this was all about. I'm pretty sure I brought this up because obviously comparing it to Arrow, because I'm not that familiar with a lot of Raz's stories. I've brought it up earlier. I'll bring it up again. But it's I know him first from the 90s Batman animated series. It's that's my first experience with him. But I got to know him a lot more through the TV show era. So I obviously know this is going to be a different Raz. But I'm curious to find out, it's the same. I mean, because it seems like it almost applies to the same thing, because it's he wants Bruce to be his heir, but it's we're going to burn Gotham down. The whole thing in Arrow was that he was oh yeah, once you become the new head, the new Raz, the new demon's head will have to basically destroy their home. It's their way to destroy the past and kind of move on. It seems like that was kind of the whole point of this too. That's why he wanted Bruce to make that final step and be the one to destroy the city, basically be the leading role in the city's destruction, but it turned out not to be that case. But to kind of help Alfred out a little bit, he pours a little bit of the Lazarus Pit, which is Lazarus Pit, onto Alfred. Now, once again, pulling from my Arrow knowledge, it's I'm very curious to see will that have any adverse effects. If you've never watched Arrow, basically the Lazarus Pit kind of makes you get a little bloodthirsty. You come back to life and everything, but it kind of makes you a little bloodthirsty. But it's it depends on whether Alfred was dead or not. It seems all it did was heal his wound. But I'm wondering, is that going to play a part going forward? But I'm curious, does it apply with the same thing, or do you just come back from the dead? Because obviously, Roz is bringing up, I've been alive a lot longer than you think of. Because the truth of the matter is, we still don't know what his goal is. Him and his League of Assassins, which was pretty badass, seeing them show up and everything, going up against Fish and her group, while at the same time, you had to deal with the whole, that was pretty badass of Jim, grabbing a sword and fighting some of them, even stabbing one through, dude, while the guy was kind of bent over, Jim stabbed him through, his back and everything. I was that was pretty brutal. And that was a big part of this, too, is because the whole situation with Jim, too, is okay, Jim, who are, you have people like Fish and Lee telling him, oh, there's darkness inside of you. Oh, it's nice to meet the real James Gordon. This is the real you. You need to stop fighting him. But he's trying his best. But this new version of the virus is a lot faster. Granted, this batch of it, Jim has in him is a lot. Maybe because the way Lucius kind of put it, he was oh yeah, but this version kind of goes a little faster. But it's the one Lee had was kind of the older virus, wasn't it? So maybe that's why Gordon was able to kind of hold on as long as well, no, because even then it was he still kind of didn't. It still went through him pretty quickly. So maybe that was a new-ish batch. I'm very curious. I'm trying to remember. Maybe Maybe that was a newish batch. Maybe that wasn't connected to like the old batch or something like that for it to run through. Not less being exposed to it like did something to it. Maybe it melded with the virus that was already inside of Gordon and kind of accelerated its growth. You know, being exposed to this newer strain. Maybe that had a part to blame in it. But nevertheless, it's kind of hard, like, you know, trying to fight that darkness inside of him, trying to be like, okay, this is everyone's saying this is who I am, and now he's starting to kind of believe in himself. Yeah, I'm this darkness. I am a monster. Especially, just so much, because that's obviously like the biggest part of this episode too. It's everyone's losing their identity. Bruce doesn't know who he is now. I mean, after what he did to the person that's like the only family he has left, the person that loves him and cares about him, and one of the few people he has left he loves and cares about. Then you have Jim dealing with this whole thing. He has Lee talking in his ear like, hey, come with me. We can finally be together. That's what you want. And it's like, yeah, that's what Gordon's always wanted. But it's like, he tries to fight it, but at the same time, it's like he wants to give into the darkness because it's a lot easier. Because it's getting harder and harder to fight it. I was kind of interested. There wasn't much interaction, but I was curious. Like, I wonder, have they ever crossed over in the comic books? I'm sure they have to have at some point. But the Riddler and the Mad Hatter, like Tetch and Nigma, like they had a slight like meeting, but it was like beyond that. I don't know if they met earlier this season or not, but at the very least, this is kind of like there was not a really bunch of like interaction. I was kind of surprised when like, you know, Jim like ended up slitting his throat. I was thinking like, oh, you want to take one of his eyeballs or something? Like, I was like, oh no, you slice his throat open and put a jar up to his neck and bled him out so that you could get the blood you needed. Wasn't just Dim, Selena's also in a position like that. Like I said, that's the main theme of the episode of like losing your identity, because I mean at the beginning you had Fish and Barbara both wanting to basically run Gotham. It's like, oh, this is like the perfect time to run Gotham. Fish still looking for her army. It's like, oh, why don't I amass all these people, you know, kind of get the virus in my own hands. But sadly, that was short-lived when she ended up dying again. But it seems like this time it might be permanent, thanks to Jim killing her. It's kind of interesting too, because her and Penguin kind of buried the hatch, and her dying is like she ended up passing on the torch. She's like, you take this city, or if you can't, you burn it to the ground. So that's a final message to like Penguin, which is kind of very interesting that, you know, it's like she was able to bury that hatch, and it's like, oh yeah, you know, together we'll rule this city together, Penguin. I guess it's because she's come to realize who Penguin is, realizing all that he's done. And it's like, oh, the fact is you rose to power and became mayor and everything. You aren't the boy that used to be one of my lackeys. You've easily grown into a powerhouse of your own. And, you know, she's come to respect him after everything he's done, you know. It's like, yeah, they had their past and their animosity towards each other. But even like Penguin admitted, like throughout their faults and everything, even someone like Fish garnered respect and loyalty, and it's like I think she's kind of gave him that in this episode too. So gosh, there were a lot of freaking goodbyes in this episode. Obviously you have Fish dying, you have Barbara being killed by Tabitha. I knew that was going to come to it. Like Tabitha kept being reserved about it. She had reservations about going through it because like she cared about Barbara. Like even though Barbara was kind of treating her like crap, you know, just because Barbara's so caught up in power and everything, she's letting it slip by that one of the people that's kind of been by her side through her transition, you know, from being, you know, kind of turning into the kind of what you pretty much label as kind of a crazy person, like all that. And it's like, I mean, Tabitha was pushed to do it mainly because it's like, yeah, she killed Butch because Butch was going to kill her, because it's like, yeah, like no more like waiting. We need to take her out now because she's just bossing us around, and it's just like, why are you like being so loyal to her, Tabitha? She doesn't deserve that loyalty. So I didn't see Butch's like situation going down like that, and it's just he's like, yeah, but in the middle of talking, bullet to the head. I was like, gosh, I was like, wow, Butch, you've been around a while and now you're gone. Obviously, you're going to get to that in a second. But then Barbara and Tabitha going at it. I was like, she's like, okay, Barbara's like, okay, can we put this past us? I'm like, she's like, it depends on if you killed Butch or not. And it's like, no. It's like the moment you admit that you killed Butch, there is no going back, because she, you know, even though they had their situation too, like, you know, obviously she gave up a hand for him, obviously meaning she really loved Butch. So that pushed her to end up killing Barbara, electrocuted her, which I assume Barbara is dead, which is kind of like, oh, that's sad. I mean, because it kind of ties in with the episode, obviously ties in with everything. It's like, Lee was threatening, he's like, yeah, the next time I meet Barbara, I'm gonna rip her head off. It's like, are you holding a grudge against her because of like what happened to you guys in the past and everything, like her like kidnapping you and using you as a hostage? Was it that, or was it like, oh, because you're kind of deranged and everything because of the virus? Which I even appreciate the fact that she's like, even though I'm deranged and everything, kind of being self-aware. She was like, even though I'm kind of like in a state I'm in, even I recognize you as kind of like sidekick in this whole situation. You were a sidekick to your brother Gallivant, you're a sidekick to Barbara, so stop trying to act all tough, saying that to Tabitha and everything. But part of me was also wondering, could it be the virus tapping into kind of that jealousy side, that basically she meant something to Gordon and that she just wanted, like, oh yeah, because you meant something to it, because you're kind of competition, because the fact is you're still breathing, so you're competition, so I'm gonna rip your head off. Maybe it's a combination of two. I mean, the virus doesn't make you very rational, so. But Barbara's possibly dead. Selena's kind of up in the air, not knowing what to do, especially because her and Bruce kind of had it out one final time, because she shows up, it's like, oh, how's Alfred? You're like, why do you care? You didn't care before about me, and you sure as hell don't care about, Alfred. The only thing you ever care about is yourself, you don't believe in anything or anyone. She's like, that's survival. But the fact of the matter is, he's like, I know you too well. You don't care about anything. And she's like, or care about us. And then she's like, I thought you did know me, Bruce. Like, and because the sad thing is, she does care. Like, the whole situation when she found out about clone Bruce, she's like, the first thing came out of my mouth was like, yo, where's the real Bruce? Then she went with the whole situation of like, I mean, mainly her going after clone Bruce was mainly because he attempted to kill her. That's her main reason for going after him like that. But then again, I guess it's like also that on some level, maybe she wanted to warn Alfred too. I'm sure it was a combination of two. More so than anything, the revenge. But it's like, there's always ups and downs when it comes to them. And this is kind of the final down. And it just kind of got, Selena thinking, she's like, okay, where do I go from here? And so she ends up meeting up with Tabitha. And Tabitha's like, yeah, I'm in a crossroads too. So it's like, hey, I could be by your side. Like, we're going to both go through transition. Because, like, Selena's like, I want more. I want more than survival, because obviously she's always hung around powerful people because she wanted a little cut of the action. But she's like, no, I'm done with that. I want to be top tier too. I want to be at the top of things as well, kind of trying to get her reign on as well. So, and then obviously we saw her pick up the whip in this episode. I've like ever since, like, obviously, like, she's been around Tabitha before, and it's like the whip thing went on. I was like, okay, that's like from the very beginning. I was like, okay, she's gonna have to be some kind of mentor to her, and it seems like that's what they're setting up. It's like, because this is a big season for like everyone slowly transitioning into being who they're supposed to be. Obviously, this season we got Ivy transitioning into who she's supposed to be. Penguin has always been transitioning, but it seems like he's finally taking steps to be who he wanted to be. Same thing for Nigma. Like I said, it's just like, I mean, I think that's what this big season was about, figuring out who the hell everyone is. I mean, I appreciate it, like, obviously going back to Gordon and Lee. Gordon had given over to the darkness, but Harvey shows up and everything. I love that you hear, like, one of the ladies in the train being like, oh, great, now we're going to be late or something. Like, just a little snide comment like that, or something like that. And then Harvey talked to him, he's like, hey, man, you're, like, the best cop that I've ever known, and you're also, like, my best friend. Is like, are we saying the sweet things? But luckily Jim was able to kind of cure himself and Lee, even though Lee didn't want it. But that was probably more so than anything the virus talking. So I saw Michael Chiklis' name too, and so I kept halfway. I don't know whether he's just kind of on the roster or whatever. For whatever reason, I just assumed he was going to pop up in the episode. But I mean, we never saw him, so that was kind of interesting to me. It's something I just kind of wanted to point out. But yeah. And one thing, too, I have to bring up is Butch. Obviously, at the end, we saw that Butch was kind of hooked up kind of to life support, bullet wound in his head. So he's not dead, just probably in a coma, I would assume. A very interesting thing, we ended up finding out his last name was Cyrus Gold. I was like, okay, they went out of their way to introduce that. It's got to be something significant. I was like, so I made sure before I started this recording to Google it. I did. Spoiler alerts. If you do not want to know, like, what that represents, if you're like, no, I'm going to wait till, like, next season, which obviously is coming back for another season, obviously switching to a different day. But nevertheless, it's like, if you want to find out through the course of the story, you can't. I was just so curious. I was like, obviously, I got to find out what it was. And I was super excited when I found out. I was like, whoa, that's cool. It's a character I'm not that familiar with. Like, I've seen him pop up and stuff from time to time, especially like the animated stuff. This might be like the first time this character's ever come to live action. I'm very curious to see how they go about it. It's mainly because I've never known this character besides his villain name. I've never known his actual name. He's popped because like animated wise, I think he's popped up in a Superman cartoon. I could have sworn there was like a storyline in Justice League that kind of revolved around him and Wonder Woman. There was some female hero this character ended up bonding with. I know that might, I feel like that's vague enough for me to not have to worry about like it spoiling, but I'm trying not to spoil it because if I wanted to, I could just say the character's name, but I don't want to. So I was like, that's very interesting. I'm wondering, will that have anything to do with the Lazarus Pit? Like I said, it depends on how the Lazarus Pit works. Like in this, like whether there, like, is it like Arrow where there's ramifications for or not? Also, what does that mean now that the Lazarus Pit has been found? Like, we know how to get to like the League of Assassins, or at least Ra's al Ghul's like group, like people. Because I don't even know if they are actually a League of Assassins in this or not. It'd be kind of interesting because I mean. Maybe we kind of get answers to them that we couldn't get in Arrow. It's like, what is your purpose? Like, what do you do? What is your interest in Gotham after all this? I mean, more so than anything, it's like, obviously the court was a means to an end. And like I said before, I truly believe this was all to the purposes of getting Bruce to destroy his own home and become the person that Ross sees as destiny. I still think the whole storyline I brought up last episode, like, yeah, it's most likely going to, because I might have spoiled that for people, but it's like, I only know this because of Arrow, so technically Arrow kind of spoiled it, but like, Roz has two daughters, Talia and Nyssa, so I would assume since we have a young Bruce Wayne, I'd assume that only Talia is around, so, and I get the feeling like, hey, I have a daughter, but it's like, I need a real heir. I mean, granted, who knows what they do. I think they stay at least decently true to certain characters' backgrounds, maybe. I mean, I don't know how true Ivy's whole background is, because I've always known Ivy to, like, at least, like, she was a sciencey person. I say a sciencey person, she was a scientist. Very, like, into plants and stuff like that before she became Poison Ivy. So, obviously, Ivy in this show, kind of an idiot. Not unless he ends up like, later on in the series or something, she gets, like, super smart or something. But it's like, Ivy in the show's kind of an idiot. But I also appreciated the fact is that, because I was wondering, I was like, oh, we haven't seen Ivy since last episode. She pops up, because that was pretty smooth on Penguin's part. I was like, okay, you're playing him. I was like, oh, this is some kind of act. There's no bullets in the gun. It's like, the moment, like, Nigma got the gun again, I was like, oh, crap. Wow. And he's like, what? This isn't fair. This is my turn. I was like, oh, man, I was so thinking you were ahead of this. I thought this was all part of your plan, Penguin. Turns out it was. I was like, okay, you got me, Penguin. That was good. I thought, because he was like, yep, I don't have any last words. So I'm like, oh, so Ivy's going to show up at the last second or something. It's like, oh, no, Ivy and Mr. Freeze show up. And, I thought that was so kick-ass that he's like, oh yeah, you've tried to fire that gun? Yeah, here's the bullets. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, basically, wait, has this always been the plan? It's like, no, after you got knocked out, then I kind of played this whole situation out. It's like, how'd you know that basically I would take you to these docks? The docks he tried to kill him during like the fur. I mean, I don't even think that counts as the first half of the season because I'm pretty sure that like, that was like a little past like halfway through the season. Because that was kind of what set off that was the winter finale, like him quote unquote killing Penguin. But I really like it because Penguin's like, yeah, you talk about the fact is I'm run by my emotions, my anger, my fear and everything. That's very true. But you, Ed, are very run by something else too. And that's your predictability, your need to finish things, which I kind of brought up like previously, like his psychology of like needing answers to everything, and like he needed things to kind of be full circle because to him it's like, oh, this will complete the circuit, because it's all about finding his identity, which is like like you have Penguin kind of throwing it in his face. It's like, your whole new identity as the Riddler was based on you killing me, but I'm still alive, so that means you failed. That means that everything you've built up, this whole persona, everything means nothing because it was all based on a lie, and that was the lie that you killed me, which in fact you didn't. And so that kind of set things in motion of like, having to, like, to him, it's like, this is my opportunity to really become who I need to be. But it's like, he failed. And he's like, so I'm not going to kill you, Ed, because I want you to be around to be a reminder of to never let my heart get in the way again. And has Mr. Freeze him like that. I was like, that was a very good twist. I was like, dude, like, they've set up some very, very interesting things, like, going forward for the next season. Obviously, we have Lee leaving town. She's like, obviously, like, everyone saw Gotham's true colors. And the fact of the matter is, she's like, yeah, I shouldn't be here because if I stayed here, like if I saw you, I wouldn't have the courage to leave, and I need to leave. The fact of the matter is, this city needs you, Gordon, and maybe this city can also save you. Just as much as you can save it, maybe it can save you, from everything that's inside of him. That the city shows them who they like could be rather than who they are. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's something that even Harvey said to Gordon, and that was the thing is that like you have a choice. Who you are isn't like predetermined. You choose who you are, and I think that, like I said, that's going to play a role going forward too, because Alfred wakes up and he ends up talking to Bruce because Bruce is lost. He's like, I don't, I've been searching for who I'm supposed to be. And Alfred's like, you find your true north. You find that one thing, your guiding light, and you fight to protect it. You let that be your purpose. And he's like, so what is your guiding light? And he's like, what's your true north? And then Alfred's like, and, because he was talking about all these memories throughout the episode of like the first time that Bruce's parents brought him home and everything. So now, Bruce has turned his attention towards the city. At the end, we see him kind of stopping a mugger and everything, because obviously he got a little training from the sensei and everything from his people. So he didn't get direct training from Ra's al Ghul, but it's obviously not the complete training, and maybe that'll play a part going forward or not, but still. It's also kind of an interesting thing that Roz kind of has this whole magician aspect to him. If you know, like, in Arrow, like, Malcolm Merlin was known as the magician. The name Merlin and everything kind of played a part in that. But it's like, he was kind of a magician. And I wonder, is that kind of, like, was that something that was always a part of Roz's character? The fact is that, like, Bruce swung the sword. Also, where's that sword at? I like that sword. I'm so curious, like, will we find out later on that the pit has been moved, or maybe it's like some mystical, because I'm feeling like this is probably going to touch on the more mystical side of like the DC universe. Like, so far, like, season 2 introduced a more science fictional side of the DC universe with all these experiments, like, because obviously, like, Roz kind of represents the more mystical side and everything because of the Lazarus pit and everything. So we're definitely going to be jumping into like the supernatural sides. Like, I mean, it seems like he's going to be the main antagonist, like, going forward for the next season. I mean, granted, he might be kind of in the shadows. He might not outright be the main antagonist, but it's definitely going to be interesting. The Court of Owls has been defeated, and I mean, that's the thing too. Like, Bruce. Because it's kind of an interesting thing, because like I think in some storylines Bruce never found the guy who actually killed his dad. I think in some storylines maybe he has, but nevertheless, it's like the people connected to his parents' death are gone, like the Court of Owls and everything. And I think he took that destiny as like, oh, be the dark event hero of Gotham when it rises from the ashes. I think he took that as an opportunity to like, hey, I my purpose. I'll take what you were saying, but I'll kind of make it forge my own path, because at the end of the day, he's the one that has to decide what he does with his life. So it's so good, and I'm so interested to see where all these paths converge, because everyone's setting themselves up. Selena's with Tabitha, probably setting her own path. You have Penguin kind of rising to power with kind of the, like, I mean, granted, we never found out what happened to the rest of Strange's experiments. We don't even know whatever happened to Strange, because the last time we saw him was like he was going to help out with the cure and everything, which I assume maybe he probably got some immunity for that. Maybe he's locked up in Arkham himself. But nevertheless, at least Penguin has Firefly, Mr. Freeze, and Ivy by his side. They kind of take back Gotham. Harvey and Jim just kind of going back to normal, at least for however long normal lasts in Gotham, because that's not likely. Things aren't going to stay quiet forever, especially with Roz, in their midst and everything. Go from one secret organization to an even bigger secret organization connected to Gotham. Very interesting times. Barbara possibly being dead. I think, like I said, I was just like, I kind of wasn't expecting that. Thought they'd be a long time. It's like, nope, they're gone. Like I said, Butch's story being what it is, I'm very interested in that front. But also to see where Bruce goes for next season. Also, what does that mean for him and Selena? Like, and also clone Bruce. Haven't seen hide nor hair of him since she knocked out Selena and Alfred. So that was a couple episodes ago. So very interested on that front too. Also, what does this mean going for Wayne Enterprises. It's like obviously like there's the board of directors, but I'm sure like all of the top people, any people that were with the court are out of the picture now. So it's like maybe Wayne Enterprises isn't as corrupted as it was before. I don't know. We would just kind of have to wait and see. Obviously, like I said, I didn't watch the video. I just kind of looked at a teaser for it. I mean, I looked at a thumbnail and a title, but basically on the DC YouTube channel, they were talking about, hey, like possibly Scarecrow popping up in season 4, which is very interesting because we've set Scarecrow up. Was that last season? Or was that season 1 we set Scarecrow up? I don't remember. Like he definitely got, because basically the fear toxin kind of got inside of him, and now he's like stuck in a perpetual state of fear. So that'd be kind of very interesting to see him kind of pop up. Like, I'm very curious. Obviously, new villains, new secrets, as the thing said, and also, but obviously, like Gotham is coming back, but it would be moving to a new time because The Gifted is premiering on Mondays with Lucifer. I'd assume. I mean, if they pop up at the same time, they're both like this fall. But Gotham is moving to Thursday, so very interesting choice. So. I hope that doesn't affect the ratings for the show at all. But I'm very, very excited to see what the 4th season has in store for us. Like I said, a lot of very interesting things got set up for the tail end of this season, and I'm very interested to see where those lines cross starting next season. Something else I thought of just thinking about before I close this out is also like Tabitha wants Nigma dead and everything. You know, for Butch to say, I wonder how's that going to play out. Like when she like. Will she find out that Butch is actually comatose, possibly, you know, whatever state he's in, to become whoever he needs to be, or destined to be, or whatever, so. I don't know. I'm definitely going to be interested to see what they do with season 4. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.